Hi guys, you're welcome back to Dialog Studios. When our application does a task that takes a considerable amount of time, it is common sense to show the progress of the task to the user. This is a good user experience practice. We'll be looking at how to implement a progress bar while downloading a file in an Android application. So I'll be creating a new project right there in Android Studio, and I will tend to download a file from the server, a picture file from the server, and I'm going to create a progress bar while downloading. So when success, the progress bar disappears and the file displayed. So let's quickly go through that. I'm going to start a new project, and I will name the project Download Progress. Let's just give it this, Download Progress. Next, I'll still maintain the phone and tablet. Next, we're going to go for the empty activity. Now the activity name, definitely it won't be main activity, it's going to be download. Let's call it Download Progress. That's the name of the, and over here the layout, I'll just make it a main. That's cool. Click on finish to actually create the structure of this particular application. So we have it go. In our Gradle scripts, we're still going to maintain the default dependencies we have. Actually not going to be adding an external library. So we're still going to maintain the Android support Compat version 7.25.1.1. It depends on the build tools that you're using in your Android Studio. So from here, I'll go to the rest, the layout. We have the main.xml, which is the UI layout of this particular application. So I would like to tweak this. I would like to have a linear layout instead of a relative layout. Linear layout. And the layout with tonight, I will use view parent, not match parent. Just take this out. I won't be having patterns wrapped around the bottom, left, top, and right. I'll take this out. And I don't actually need the tools context. I'll also take that out. The only thing I'll need here is the orientation. Which is vertical. It's fine. And I'll take away the text view where we're going to have the download button. So we're going to have it this way. Button. Layout with height. Match parent and wrap content. This should be wrap content. And I'm going to have the text, which is down Android. Text. That's text that was actually displayed on the download button. Need one of these. This should be equals to download file with progress bar. That's cool. And we need to give it a margin at the top so that there'll be a bit sort of breathing space between here and the toolbar. So let's give it Android layout, margin top. Let's give it 50 dp. That's fine. Afterwards, I'll create an image view that will actually display the downloaded image file. Layout width and height, let's give it 350 dp, and the height, let's give it a sort of 200 dp. That's fine. So our image view will sit inside that container. From here, we've actually have a layout file. It's a simple one. I'll be moving to the Java class, where I'm actually going to use the async tag to download while in background, and doing that, there will be a progress dialog. So once it is successful, it's actually going to call on the file, which will be saved in the path of the storage. I'll show you how to actually go about that. It's quite simple. We have the download progress that extends the app compact activity. Now inside here, we'll create the button to show the progress dialog. Call the button btn show progress. We need to import the button. Alt enter will bring that in. Now we also need the progress dialog. While we'll give it the private progress dialog. Actually call it the progress dialog on the Android app, and we give it an object called pdialog. That's fine. We'll need to call the image view. Let's quickly call the image view. Image view. Give it an object called my image. That's fine. And we need to now call the type. When 0 for horizontal progress bar, let's have the progress bar type. Now give a public static final. Our public should be lowercase, static final integer, progress bar type. That's the name. It's just a good naming convention. We actually assign 0, and we need a file URL to the download image. So we have that as a static field, static string. We call it file URL equals http images.ak.gov.ng/logo.png, the PNG file. Close it right there. That's set appropriately. Now we move to the onCreate method. We call the layout main. That's cool. So inside the onCreate method, we need to show the progress bar button. Here we call the btn show progress. Call the button, whereby we're going to get the view by ID button. We need to find view by ID. Call RID btn progress bar. Just this way. That's cool. btn progress bar. We need to call the image, which is actually my image, which will be equals to the image view find the view by ID, r.id, that's my image. We're having a kind of error. Definitely we've not assigned an ID to the XML that points to the progress, to show the progress, and to the image. So let's look at that. Probably we've forgotten. Wow, we actually need an ID. Yeah, let's assign an ID. Very important, the ID, so that you'll be able to reference the items. So we're going to give it at ID, and we call btn progress bar. Same thing goes for the image view. It's an ID, right? ID equals at plus ID. We give it my image. That's cool. Let's go back to our download progress class. Let's see, the error is gone. So we need to continue. This time we'll need to call the progress bar and attach the click listener to that, to that button that will actually trigger the progress and also the download. Show progress. We need to set on click listener to this particular button. Inside that, it's going to actually instantiate the new view. On click listener. That's cool. We're going to call it brace this way. So we have to pass the view here. First of all, we need to call the override to override the onClick parent class. Call it public void that returns no value. OnClick, what's going to execute an action. The view, give it an object of v. Inside there, we're going to start the new async tags inside the click. So we're going to start actually instantiate the new download file from URL, which is file from, it's actually a method we're still going to do. So just keep calm. Actually instantiate that, and we execute the method, passing the file URL as its parameter. Just this way. Download file from URL, we call that method, and we're actually going to pass in the file URL as its parameter. So we get to still look at that particular method. But something quickly, we actually need to call the progress bar. The download file URL, if you should notice, is being instantiated. Definitely, we're still going to create a nested class over here, and we actually instantiate it right inside the download progress, which is the main activity replica. So we're still going to get there, but let us just continue with our coding. Now, if you should look at here, this is the end of the onCreate method. So we are going out of the onCreate method to show the dialog. Let's create the dialog. Need the at override. which is actually going to call protected dialog, and it's going to call we have it as the onCreate dialog. It's a method, create dialog, which we're going to pass an integer ID, its parameter, and we're going to have it this way. Fine, with some reason it's been deprecated, but it's still useful. You can see it's not, but it's still very useful. We get to look at the new method that will be called from the dialog, which still works the same way with this, but we're still going to continue because it's still going to work. We have the switch case to check the ID. Now, for the first case, if it's a progress bar type, which is 0 by instantiation bar type, which we actually set to 0 earlier. Now we're going to pass in the P dialog will be equals the new progress dialog as an instantiation to this particular method. Now we're going to call the P dialog as well. We're going to set the message. As a message, we set message, and we're going to call downloading. Well, this is the dialog itself now. Downloading file. Please wait. That's fine. After that, we're still going to call the P dialog. We're going to set indeterminate. That's till when success to continue. So indeterminate is false, which should actually opt out once the success is being called. So now we have a P dialog again, which we now set the maximum, which will be 100. Still do some stuff to the P dialog. P dialog is quite useful and edited right there because that's the object of the dialog. We're going to set a progress star, which will actually be the progress dialog. And we call the style horizontal. We want it to be in an horizontal, not vertical. No, it should be slant. Still call the P dialog and set cancelable, so it's cancelable enabled. So you can cancel it out if you don't really want it. True. Now we need to show the dialog itself after all these attributes. We call the show method to show it. Now we need to return the P dialog. That's cool. And out, we only have a case, you know. So if it's not, by default, it should return null. So if it's not the case, which is the progress bar type, it's going to return null. That's fine. We've actually created the dialog, and now we are going to continue with our application. The next step is actually we need to create the background async tags to download the file. After the dialog, let's get to download the file, which we will actually need to call the download file URL. Now we're going to create a class outside here, outside the dialog. We call it download file from URL, which corresponds with that. Now we still need to extend async tags this time, passing generic versus a string, another string, another string, string. So 3 parameters. Let's go. Before starting the background thread, we need to show the progress bar dialog. So I want you to follow along as I'm going through this. We have the override. Just to call on, we now call something called protected void on pre-execute. That's before executing. That's just what that means. What are we going to do? We're going to call the super class of the pre-execute, and we're going to show the dialog. What about we passing the progress bar type, which is actually the case here, the progress bar type. That's fine. After this, we need to download file in a background thread. We're going to do it this way. Let's override. Still have called the protected string doing background. What about we call string? Now call the URL, which is f URL. Just this way. Let's have our count, the integer. Now we run a try and catch. First try, it's going to be a curly brace. Will be the URL. We call the URL class from the java.net. Create an object URL. We instantiate it with a new URL. Now we're going to pass in parameter into here, which is actually going to be the FURL and the integer, which is 0. Just this way, FURL, integer 0. Now, what next? We need to start up the URL connection. We'll create the connection, which will be equals to URL dot open connection. No, sorry for that. Open connection. Now we need to call the connection to connect. Just that. So this will be useful so that you can show a typical 0 to 100% progress bar. Now let's get the integer length file. That's the essence of the length file. Length of file equals to connection. And we call the get content length. Close that out. Now we call the input stream to download the file. Input stream equals to the new buffer input stream. Now we're going to pass in the URL to open the stream. Pass an integer. Let's say it's 192. That's a stream. Close that there. We also need to get an output stream. About we're going to call the string storage directory where it's going to be stored into. Now before continue, forgotten the input stream object, which is input. So because we will need the objects later on. Now we have the storage directory, which will be equals to the environment get external storage state directory. Let me call it this way: get external storage state. It won't be a storage state, it's going to be get external storage directory. Now, this one. Now with that we get the absolute part. This way. Now we're going to still have our string. We have a file name like a sort of variable. But we now give it the name, which will give a backwards slash downloadable or downloaded file .jpg. Fine. Let's close it out this way. Just to continue, we now use the file, the Java IO, to call the image file. Let's bring it in. Alt enter brings that in. The image file, which will be equals to new file. Instantiated that. We pass the storage directory, about we concatenate with the file name. That's cool. So we form the image file object. Now we still call the output stream. To call the output equals to new file output stream. Now we pass in the image file. It's the parameter over there. Close that up there. The file output stream pass the image file. That's fine. Let's move on. We call the byte, which is the data equals to new byte. Passing just like a KB, 1024 bytes. We have lang for total equals to 0. So there'll be a while loop. While loop. Now while the count equals to the input read past the data, if that is not equals to -1, you know what you do? We're going to call the total. So in every time it does that, the total will be added to the count. Just this way. And after this, the onProgress update will be called. So we have to call the publish progress. Whereby we're going to concatenate that with an integer. We now call passing another one. The total multiply by 100. This is sort of calculation to get that done. Divided by the length of file. You get that right? That's fine. And we need to output and write first parameter, the data, 0, count. We output, we write the data, 0, and count. Outside this method, that's outside the while loop, we need to call the flushing output. Output.flush. That's fine. We also need to close the string or output. That's close. So just because we've not handled the exception, that's why we still get those errors flashing all along. Once we get to catch the exception, it's actually going to go off. So don't panic. We have input to call on the close. We're going to close the input. And outside here, we need to catch the exception. Catch. Exception. E to depict that. Now, can you see all the errors gone? Because we actually catch an exception. You know, because a try and catch. A try must have a corresponding catch. If you're familiar with Java, exception, errors and exception. So you shouldn't worry. Now we need to catch the exception. So now we log to call the Android utility log. So if there's an exception, you need to handle it gracefully. Call the error the E, which is the object passed to get the message of. There's enormous ways that you can actually catch an exception if you actually know the particular error that is going to come back. sometimes file URL not constructed well, input and output errors. We have illegal arguments, a lot of them, but this is actually going to capture any error whatsoever that might be triggered, so we just get a message of the error and log gracefully. So after that, we need to return null. That's cool. Can you see? Right insert, clean code. We're moving on. Now we need to update the progress bar. How are we going to update the progress bar? We call protected void on progress update. It's the person string. What about the progress is being called? Now this time we're going to set the progress percentage. Call on the P dialog to set progress. Now we call the integer pass the int to the progress with an index of 0. That's cool. That's how to pass that. So after completing the background task, we need to dismiss the progress dialog. Once this is successful, as you're looking right there, which is the doing background, we need to now dismiss. So if you're familiar with threads, Java is just replicating that, because that will be doing the background with a background thread. Still have the override. Now we call the protected again void on, not pre this time, it will be what? Guess post execute. Post execute. We pass the string, the file URL, and we have to dismiss the dialog after the file was downloaded. So we call the dismiss dialog. Fine, others can actually be modified with a fragment, the dialog fragment, which I'll be doing. So to improve this, we'll just integrate the dialog fragment to call the dismiss, the show dialog, the create dialog. Now we're going to run the progress type, the progress bar type. So after displaying downloaded image into the image view, we need to read the image path from the SD card, so that we're going to set it to the image view. Once it has been downloaded, we have to read it from the SD card. So let's try to call this. We need to call the string, the image path, where we specify the output over here. That's a string file name. We specify the file output stream. Where the download gets, once it calls the URL, it gets the download, which is the input stream, and we need to build it up. As you see, we build it up with the download file.jpg as JPEG. So that's just it. Now we need to call this, which will be equals to the environment get external storage directory. Over there, we concatenate this with the downloaded file.jpg. That's cool. Close it this way. Now we need to use the image path. What about we call them my image, set image drawable to that particular ID. About we call the drawable, the graphics drawable class, and we're going to create from path past the image path. So we create a drawable from the path. That's just what that is. That's calling from this. Cool, clean. We have our code set. Our Java class is being created. A recap of this: we create the button progress, and for the progress dialog, we have the image view as well. Now we have the file URL which was used, which actually points to where the logo sits. That's the picture file. In the onCreate method, we call the layout main. We initialize the button progress and the image. We set onClick listener to the button progress. So while you click on this, it triggers the onClick method, whereby it instantiates the download file URL class and passing the file URL that is parameter to execute. So right there, we quickly create the dialog. We set up our dialog that has a message of download file, please wait. It's indeterminate. We set the maximum to 100, that's 100%. And we set the progress style to horizontal. That's cancelable, so you can cancel it out once it's showed. And we call the show. We have to return the p dialog. So this is just used, and once the onCreate method or the button for the download triggers, we call on the download file URL and pass in the execute, which is the file URL. Now on pre-execute is actually going to show the progress dialog. That's before running or before downloading. And now we need to do in background, which is actually going to use the background thread to download, where we use the async tags to actually create it. Now we use the input stream that calls the buffered input stream. We have the output, whereby we get the external storage directory to get the absolute path, and we have our file name. Now we concatenate the storage directory with a file name to create the output stream. We also did a while loop, to publish the progress, so that the progress will continue to count to 100. We did a sort of calculation with the length of the file. The bigger the file, so it's actually going to calculate from 0 to 100 based on the large extent of the file. So that's why we need to divide with the length of file to get the publish progress of the dialog. So after that, we also need to call the exception. So if there's any error, it's going to get the message, and it's actually going to log that to the logs. And we have the on progress update, whereby it's actually going to pass the integer with the progress state, which is 0. On post execute, that's after the doing background method has been run successfully, it's actually going to dismiss the dialog, which you are still going to use the fragment dialog to actually do in a later session. After doing that, we need to populate the image view with the downloaded file, whereby we still need to get the environment external storage directory. We actually have to build the file name. So we're going to create the from path and pass in the image path, so that it's actually going to populate this into the my image, which is a space or an ID as specified for the image view. That's just it. We need to look at the manifest. We need to actually add some basic permissions whereby we can actually use. So we're going to actually look at that quickly. Let's get to look at the manifest, the Android manifest. We need to allow to connect to internet, because this is actually going to talk or download a file from the internet. So we use this permission, Android name, Android permission. We need internet. Let me just quickly look at that. Internet, Android permission, internet. Over here, and over this way. Now we also need to write to external storage, because it's actually going to write the downloaded file to the SD card of your device. If you don't have an SD card, it's going to create a path for it and actually going to store it in your memory. So we need to actually make a permission for that, which is actually going to be write external storage. Write external storage over there. So we need that permission set. Once we have the set, that's cool. The download progress is going to be our launcher activity, which is specified accurately. So we have it this way. From here, I'm going to be showing the sample of this particular application in an emulator. So I will tell you to still stay by, so that we're actually going to look at it. It feels, we're actually getting to get to click on the button and download the picture, which is actually going to display in the image view. So stay tuned. Here we go with the download progress. We get to see the button, download file with progress bar. So let's click on the button to get it started. Can you see the download file? Quickly, we get that downloaded, So you could see it and you could see the progress. So that's just how to integrate the progress dialog while downloading a file. It's because this file is quite small in size. It's just barely maybe 60 KB. That's why it was very fast. And you could see how the progress actually went from 0 to 100. So that's it. That's all about integrating the progress bar into your application while downloading a file. It can be any file. It can be movies. It can be MP3. It can be MP4. It can be PNG. It can be JPEG. So you should actually use a progress dialog while downloading file. We can also improve on this, whereby you also show a notification in the notification bar where the download will continue to stay there. That's an advanced way to actually integrate a download progress to your application. Thank you very much for hanging out with me with these basics. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Have a wonderful time. Bye bye.